Hi everybody, I'm Robert Kennedy. It is February 21st and I have not updated anything on my YouTube channel in quite a while, so I thought I would take the opportunity of the occasion of the Motorcar Cavalcade Concourse to Elegance, use this as an opportunity to post something new. This was a really cool and completely unexpected opportunity, privilege and an honor. The folks in charge of it actually reached out to me a few weeks before, I don't know, maybe a month or so before the show was put on February 3rd and 4th down in Miami. They asked me to provide a quote for their program. They had various celebrity types commentating on the different judging criteria. I spoke about Arrow. They even put me right across the page here from Peter Egan from Road and Track. So super honored, completely surprised by it. They wrote me a little handwritten thank you note and even gave me a little gold medal here. It says third annual February 2024 Motorcar Cavalcade celebrating the art of the automobile. It's in a sealed container here, a little display case, real neat little commemorative medal. I've been given some other pretty neat stuff. I've mentioned a few of these things before in previous videos. This little pin from Ron Muccioli that saved the Mustang in 1989. This S650 5.0 prototype fender badge that was given to me. A press kit from the 1994 Mustang release was a gift. William on the fender badge and Dale on that, and even a gentleman from my local club here gave me this Lincoln Highway wine after my Lincoln Highway article was published on performance.ford.com. Anyway, those are kind of neat things. I just thought I would thank the Motorcar Cavalcade folks and also give you guys an update about the Unbridled book tour. If you go to unbridledmustangbook.com, you can see the growing still list of book tour locations and dates. Most of the 11 that are on there right now, I think 7 of the 11 are confirmed. The other 4 or so maybe are in the works still. They're expected, but it's not locked in for 100% certain. I did get contacted by the Capital City Ford and Mustang Club in Lincoln, Nebraska a few weeks ago, and they asked if I would come speak to them. Their club members were wondering, you know, there's been so many different books written about Mustang. What is different about Unbridled? Why should they bother putting that, adding that to their bookshelf, to their collection? So I made a little PowerPoint to explain to them what is exactly different and why this is worthy of being added to your collection. So why don't we take a look at that right now? Okay, so as I was saying, Unbridled, Passion, Performance, and Politics Behind America's Favorite Pony Car. It is an unauthorized, unauthorized book about the history of the Mustang. It is not an official Ford licensed product. That was the intention from the beginning because I wanted to be able to speak, you know, it's a love letter to the brand, but I wanted to speak about other cars as well. I wanted to be able to talk about the highs and the lows and get a very realistic picture of the actual history behind the car rather than necessarily subscribing perfectly to a corporate approved narrative. So just a tiny brief little bit about me and why the heck I'm qualified in any sort of way to write a book and give any opinions. I am a graduate of Wyoming Technical Institute out in Laramie, Wyoming, where I was then hired by Porsche. I was a Porsche Premier Technician down in Dallas, Texas at Park Place Porsche for about 5 years there. You can see a little picture of me standing with the then brand new Carrera GT supercar. Left that business to meet and date and marry my wife, have some kids, start a personal fitness training business, KennedyFitnessOmaha.com, workoutwhereyouwork.com. But then when COVID shut us down temporarily in early 2020, produced a documentary that about Mustang that was well received by a lot of folks, and ultimately got John Kluwer over at Ford Performance to give me a call and say, hey, you really ought to expand that into a book. And why don't you write some articles for performance.ford.com as well? So did that and worked about 3.5 years on the book. It came out July 28th, 2023. That photo you can see of me there at the Mustang Memories event put on by the Moxham Club. Thank you, Mike Ray and John Kluwer, for having me up there at Ford World Headquarters. You can see the glass house in the background, and I'm standing with the 6.1 liter Cobra Jet R SVE high performance concept car there. What is different about the book itself, though? Okay, I independently published this thing. I created Unleaded Only Publications. That is my little company specifically for the purpose of releasing this book. It is almost 400 pages long, has over 900 photos in it, most of which, many of which are sourced from actual individual Mustang owners from around the world. Several different countries. You can see them there. I don't need to read them all. And it goes beyond just covering Mustang. Obviously, Mustang's the star of the story, but it does talk about both foreign and domestic competitors. It talks about friendly competitors like the Mercury Cougar and Capri, things like that, that share a lot of hardware with Mustang. But it, of course, talks about Camaro and Firebird, Charger and Challenger, GTO, Trans Am, stuff like that as well, even Porsches and Mitsubishis and whatnot throughout the rest of the book. And very significantly talks about the very social, political, and economic influences that have forced the car to change, as well as even pop culture. How Mustang has influenced not only the industry, but also movies and music and things like that. It's pretty broad in its scope. We did use decorative blue end sheets. These are the pages that actually attach the inside book to the hardcover. All of these hardcovers, by the way, are hand laid to use these blue end sheets that are actually designed to evoke the idea of a well-worn leather driver's seat. And they are blue because the exterior cover is white. So that when you open the book, you get this blue page with just a little bit of white around it. Kind of reminds the idea of the blue oval without using it at all. And also, I think significantly, I'm a patriotic kind of guy. We could have published and sold this book for about half the price had we done so in China. Virtually everybody else prints their books in China. But I thought, to be true to the brand, Mustang, it ought to be, like the car, made right here in these great United States of America. So hopefully you guys can understand that and justify the extra few dollars on the price tag. It is not cheap to make products here in America with actual American employees in American factories. Also, every generation gets its own chapter. Okay, every chapter is broken down into a familiar format each time, starting with an opening quote that sets the tone for the chapter. Sometimes it's from somebody at Ford, sometimes it's something completely different, so some other source of a quote, but it sets the tone. A short inspiration section. This is usually 5 or 6 paragraphs, just giving you an idea of the major influences that are going to trigger the changes in this next generation. Then a longer development section talking about everything from design, artists and engineers, all the nuts and bolts of how the new generation comes together. And then it goes through production, broken down by model year, so you can get a clear idea of the evolution of the car over the span of each cycle. And then it goes into a special editions and racing section where it highlights two of the most significant limited production models of that particular generation and explores any of the racing highlights of that era. Then it ends, each chapter ends with a retrospectively section. Everything else is written like you're in the moment and things are happening in real time. Retrospectively then looks back from today's perspective and says, okay, so this is what we had thought at the time. This is kind of how it holds up 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10 years later. Also, lastly, thoughts on this page. I do have very privileged to have a foreword written by John Clure over at Ford Performance, and essentially a second foreword, we called it a prelude, by Donald Farr, the editor over at Mustang Times magazine. I wanted to make sure, since I am a first-time author, that some folks with significantly more experience and clout in the industry lent a little bit of credibility. It's kind of like when they had Marlon Brando headlining Superman over Christopher Reeve in 1978. He was new, nobody knew who he was, but everybody knew Marlon Brando. Everybody knows John M. Clure and Donald Farr, so I thank them sincerely for adding a little extra level of credibility to the book. I could not have done the book. I know it's self-published, but I could not have done it on my own. This was a collaborative effort, even though it's not an official Ford licensed product in any way whatsoever. The book never would have made it out of the starting gate without so much greatly appreciated help from folks at Ford Performance, at Ford Archives, from Ford Images. I even ended up getting an email from Bill Ford Jr.'s office, his secretary or assistant, somebody like that, emailed me and said, Mr. Ford would like more information about your book on his desk tomorrow morning. That was, it was intimidating. So I sent that up to him, and he did not respond back saying, okay, go ahead, but he also, more significantly, did not respond saying, please don't. So we moved ahead with it. I took that as a seal of approval, just not being told not to. So also Jeremy and Neil Cummings over at Shelby American, super good to work with there, giving me rights to use a lot of Shelby related photography, both of Carroll himself and of his cars. Jack Roush and all of his staff worked with several people over at Roush Performance. Greg and Steve Saline over at Saline provided photography, provided quotes. Jack provided a quote too. In fact, Jack Roush actually wrote a paragraph in the book. He shared a story that I was unfamiliar with about when Chevrolet snaked a bunch of his employees out from under him, and he had to restaff his racing season at the last moment, and even went on to win, I think it was first, second, third, fourth, and fifth place in the next race. I mean, just absolutely dominated. Anyway, that story's in there, and that short story is not, I mean, I revised it, but it was Jack's story. Bob and Dario Orlando over at Stida also providing photography and quotes, just like Steve and Jack. Vaughn Gittin Jr. and again, several staff members over at RTR, wonderful to work with. Even got to meet them. I guess I met Steve in person on last year's book tour, but Vaughn and Chelsea Denofa met with me over at Holly Ford Festival at the end of last year's book tour. Super nice guys. They were really cool to my kids. So if you guys are watching this at all, thank you, Vaughn. Thank you, Chelsea. You guys are awesome. Kenny Brown and Kerry Southworth over at Kenny Brown Performance. I think I might have actually had the honor of being the last person to interview Kenny before he passed away. Absolute tragedy there. Super nice guy, really cool. Kerry was very kind to she and her staff, hooked me up with a bunch of Kenny Brown and Saline even photos from his time at Saline after he passed away. Jim Clock over at Shinoda, the folks over at JBA Speed Shop and Peregrine Automotive. Alex was real nice to work with there. Charlie Kemp with his race cars. I got to talk to Tom and Gail Wise. If you guys don't know those names, Gail was the first lady to ever bring home a Mustang. Sweetest couple, living up in Illinois, I think, still. Anyway, I got to talk with them on the phone a couple of times. Michael Leone, he was the gentleman behind the Iacocca edition Mustangs and several other folks. But like I said, if not for those interviews, I wouldn't have been able to make such a compelling book. So the actual chapters themselves. Chapter 1, Gestation, covers everything leading up to the Mustang production car. By the way, that photo in the bottom corner there is the prototype flathead V8 that Henry Ford himself worked on. That is on display down at the Edison Ford Winter Estates in Florida. I got to take that picture myself, so that's why that's there. It's kind of cool. It covers everything from the quadricycle through World War I and II, the Spanish flu, Model A, all this, the Great Depression. And kind of a theme throughout the book is how history repeats itself. So, of course, the Spanish flu in the first chapter, we end up talking about COVID-19 late in the book. The Great Depression, much later during the S-197s, we talk about the Great Recession, things like that. We do mention, like I said, other brands that are important too. Chevrolet Corvette, Ford Thunderbird. We talk about Shelby Cobra, Total Performance, all that. And that goes through the 1962 Mustang 1 concept car. And we get into the production cars. Chapter 2, Generation 1, very special Falcon. We talk about the Mustang 2 concept car from 1963, not the Mustang 2 production car. And we talk about all the different models, okay, including competitive models, as you'll see there. You know, when Mustang came out, it was Barracuda and Mustang, and there was such a discrepancy in the success of those models. The segment didn't get referred to cumulatively as fish cars. They got referred to as pony cars for a reason. We talk about foreign models. From Mexico and from Europe and all this, talk about social unrest, you know, the race riots and things like that, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and stuff like that going on, Mustang's impact on pop culture. Of course, I'm talking about 007, you know, with Goldfinger and the Mustang showing up in that, and Mustang Sally and other things with music. Talk about the early federal safety and emissions laws that just started coming into play late in that first generation. And of course, the most special editions of the original era are the Shelbys. So we talk about both the American and foreign. I'm talking Mexico, I'm talking Europe, different models of Shelbys that people aren't necessarily aware of, and the racing of the era, and Win on Sunday, Sell on Monday. Steel Horse Racing. Chapter 3, Generation 2. There's my wife and kids down there with our Classic 2 convertible, number 6 of 24, shipped directly from Dearborn Assembly down to Clearwater, Florida for conversion at MS Coach Builders. Not entirely dissimilar to how San Jose was shipping partially completed 2+2s over to Shelby American to become GT350s back in '65. But not so many people know this story. So, of course, that's talked about in the special editions in racing, along with the Monroe Handler, before filling the gap, racing with Roush. I guess backing up on the slide there, of course, we talk about all the different production models. There we talk about different competitors, because the Mustang 2 had a different market segment than the first generation did. So instead of talking about Trans Ams and Challengers, Superbirds and whatnot, we're talking about Monza, we're talking about the Porsche 924, we're talking about things like that. Again, foreign markets are huge now, and they have been since 2015, but they existed back in the day. So we're talking about the 1974. Everybody thinks they didn't make a V8 Mustang 2 in '74. They absolutely did. And it was not bogged down by the same emissions restrictions that we had in America. It just wasn't available here in America. Chapter 4, Gen 3, Fox Mustang. Again, talking about all the different models. Talking about a ton of special edition specialty manufacturer, tuner type cars, concepts. I don't need to read them all there. I don't know how many you guys have heard about the Python or the M25, or even from the special editions in racing there, the M81. All sorts of cool stuff. The V8 SVOs, again, that's down in Mexico, completely different car than what we had in America. We cover the first of the 93, the SVT Cobra Rs, and Fearsome Fox Blue Ovals returned to racing. Of course, for social commentary, we're still talking about the second oil crisis, like we talked about the first during the Mustang 2 chapter. And we talk about the ST16. A lot of people know the story of how Ford was going to make a front-wheel drive Mustang. It ended up being called Probe. They know about the letter write-in campaign after the media leaked that. But nobody before this book knew who it was that leaked that to the media to leak to the public. I actually named the person. I picture the person in here. When they told me that, hey, this was me, I thought, well, are you sure? Because that's kind of like saying you're Santa Claus or Elvis or somebody, like you're Jesus. I mean, this is kind of a big deal to say, I'm the guy. But I called the magazine editor that he leaked it to, and I said, this is what this guy's saying. Can you confirm that? And the editor says, well, he told you could print this? I said, yeah. He says, well, yeah, that's how I remember it. It's like, okay. So it's still breaking news, 35 years later. So chapter 5, Gen 4, SN95, talk about the Mach 3 concept car, likening that to the Mustang 1 and Mustang 2 concepts before it. Of course, Mach 1 and Mach 2 concepts before it as well. Talk about all the different special editions, several different specialty manufacturer models at this point. You can see those listed there. Talk about OBD2, why we switched from the small block to the modular motors, the single overhead cam, dual overhead cam, 4.6 liter engines. Talk about September 11th. That actually has an impact, just like everything else does. Talk about the 95 and the 2000 Cobra Rs, and Untamed Steeda winning by brute force, and that is a reference to John Force and his incredible drag racing streak. Folks at JFR Racing were real cool to work with, and NHRA, they hooked me up with some pretty neat content as well. Sixth chapter, Gen 5 Retro Reboot. Again, same format here, talking about all the special editions, competitive models. There's a whole slew of new Shelby stuff that came out there. So we talk a lot about the Shelbys. We talk about Foose. I got to meet Chip Foose a couple years ago as I was working on the book. In fact, he was one of the early folks to get any sort of a sampling of the book to read. So got that in there. Some real neat photography that I took myself of a local Foose stallion here. Talking about, again, I mean, you can see him. I don't need to speak about all the stuff. The Great Recession, as mentioned earlier, the return of the 5.0, and the disappearance of the independent rear suspension that we'd been seeing in the previous gen SVT models. The Iacocca edition, again, I think it's one of the most beautiful Mustangs ever made, and the return of the GT350. Everybody thinks 5th gen S197, they're thinking GT500, but in fact there were GT350s direct from Shelby American, and they are neat. Old horse, new tricks, drifting into NASCAR and beyond. You can obviously tell from the title there, we're starting to talk about drifting and Mustang's entrance into NASCAR and the absence of Taurus and Thunderbird and whatnot from before. Brings us to the S550, talking about, again, all the production models, special editions, some concepts that are pretty neat. Everybody hears King Cobra and they think about the 70s, but in fact they did a concept car, and they did 3 special edition cars that were given to the public. So that was a pretty neat story, and I've got pictures of all 3 of those cars. You notice the competitors now that we're talking global, we're talking Porsche 911, we're talking BMW, we're talking other things like that, not just Camaro and Challenger. We start talking about some other brands. Petty's Garage, Hennessy, CDC, all that. Talk about the COVID-19 pandemic that obviously had a hugely negative impact on the entire automotive industry, and Mustang was not in any way immune to that. And yes, I did intend to make the pun there about immunity. Okay, so Peregrine Revenge GT, if you guys don't know about this, it talks all about it. Way cool cars. And the Cita SSVs, which are the spiritual successors to the Ford's SSPs from back in the day, and the racing section again. And then we talk about galloping into an electrified future, predicting now, looking out at what's happening right now and into the near future. So we're talking about the Mach-E, we're talking about the 650 itself, and I have to absolutely take special attention to pay special thanks to Edwin Krenz. He was the chief program engineer throughout the development of the 650. Now he's moved on to the Bronco program, but I sat for a year and a half waiting to have an interview with him. Ford's gatekeepers are wonderful people that are very good at their job keeping the gate. But eventually Edwin reached out to me and he said, okay, I'm happy to talk to you now. So we sat for an hour and a half long one-on-one interview, which was only rivaled by my interview with Jack Roush, which was also about an hour and a half long one-on-one. And Edwin was absolutely fascinating, talking about the development process on the 650, what they thought about doing, what they did do, what they didn't do, equally as interesting. And without saying what's happening in the future, offered some hints if you read between the lines here and there. And then, of course, I offer my own take on that in the epilogue in particular, give some of my own opinions on how it might not just survive but thrive as Mustang gallops into an electrified future. You will notice it says, sadly, no GTD coverage. Hopefully in an updated version of the book here in the next couple of years, we might have a little bit of GTD coverage. But the fact is, this was an unauthorized book done outside of Ford's official oversight. So there were things that they kept secret even from me. And I found out about the GTD the same time everybody else did, about 3 weeks after the book released. So that's the only thing really not covered in here. Otherwise, my intention was to make the most complete history of the Mustang, both Ford versions and specialty versions, both production and racing history, and that's kind of what I went ahead and did. You will see then, if you go to UNBRIDLEDMustangBook.com, the book runs for $99.99 plus tax and shipping. You will notice if you see me along the book tour, I'll go ahead and, of course, not charge you the shipping, and we might even have like a cash incentive or something like that, like I did this night at the Capital City Ford and Mustang Club, where I would cover the tax or some such scenario, just so I don't have to be counting out pennies and nickels and dimes and changing ones and whatnot. You know, simplifies my life. So anyway, that's it. Thank you so much. I hope I didn't bore you and maybe even turned you on to the idea of buying the book. If you go to the reader's reactions page of UnBridledMustangBook.com, you will see an enormous selection of positive feedback from so many readers of the book that have just been over the moon about it. I've been very flattered by the positive reaction everyone's had. In fact, the book is up for a few awards right now. It hasn't won them yet, but hopefully it will. That would be really cool. So if it does, rest assured, I'll be making another video to acknowledge it and thank everybody for that. Thank you so much. Visit us on UnBridledMustangBook.com. Come see us on the road on the Unbridled Book Tour. You can check the dates and times, locations on the website. Thanks, bye.